Okay, here we go.
What are you supposed to be?
All right,
What class you
we
supposed to be?
are going into a narrative mini unit,
Okay,
all right?
okay.
Somebody
Why
want to
you
tell
over
me
here
what
now?
narrative is? If I said narrative, do you know what a narrative
Walk
is?
past the water bubblers to go here. Go.
Say it again.
Go walk.
Oh, you saw the plot, right? So if I say narrative, you're thinking plot. Okay, so what when we say plot, where do we see a plot? In a story, right? So we see a plot in a story. So if we're gonna have a lesson on plot, and I'm saying we're starting a narrative mini unit, and we see plots in stories, what do we think a narrative is? What might another word for narrative be? You just said it. No, what might another word for narrative be? What contains a plot? A story. So another word for narrative is a story. Okay, so we're going to do a narrative mini unit as we saw before. It is only going to be until next Friday. All right, we will be done, published with two narratives or stories. All right, one is going to be a continuation of a story. The other one is going to be writing from a different point of view. By next Thursday, the second class I have you. All right, so it's a pretty advanced timeline, but we can do it. Okay, they're not full blown out, and they're based on stories that we're going to read, and we're going to start our read aloud tomorrow for our first story. Okay, so we are going to review a couple techniques so that you can utilize them in your writing. All right, so you should have all had these in elementary school, so these are going to be review. They are not going to be you are mastering the skill. We are going to do these skills again with our next unit, but we just kind of want to refresh your memory so that when we go into this mini unit and start writing, you know what the expectations are. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, which we already started with Ghost, okay, is we're going to review the parts of plot with this video.
There are 5 basic elements that make up a story. Plot is one of those 5 basic elements. The plot is a term for the main events in the story. The main events happen in a certain order, and so the plot is sometimes also referred to as the storyline. Looking at it more closely, the plot can be further broken down into 5 parts. It's helpful to imagine those 5 parts as a roller coaster ride. The first part of the plot is called the exposition. The exposition is simply the beginning of the story. Here, the author introduces the characters and establishes the setting. The next part is the rising action. This is where the conflict of the story is revealed. During the rising action, the main character encounters some sort of problem that creates tension, such as when the wolf blows down the little pig's house. The climax is the next part of the plot. It is the most exciting part of the story and the point where there is a change in the direction of the story and its course of events. In The Three Little Pigs, this would be when the wolf gets frustrated and tries to enter the brick house through the chimney. The next part is the falling action. It occurs right after the climax. The tension from the conflict starts to decrease and the story events wind down or settle toward an end. The falling action in The Three Little Pigs is when the wolf lands in the hot soup pot and gets burned. The last part of the plot is the resolution. Here, the problem of the story is solved and the story ends. In The Three Little Pigs, this is when the wolf runs away and disappears into the forest.
Created using how to.
Okay, we are going to practice plot with a short video, but the first thing that I want to do is kind of review exactly what they talked about. Number 1, climax. Climax is usually the most exciting part. It's where all the action comes together, but it also is where the conflict comes to a point where the main character has to make a decision, which is going to change how the story goes. okay? Can anybody think of what the climax, some of you might not be there yet, but the climax of Ghost was? Where the main character has to make a decision that changes how the rest of the story goes. Those of you that finished, you wanna take a, go ahead, try. I just don't want you to give anything away.
He had to make a decision where he had either had to stop doing what he was doing, or he had to leave the team. If he continued.
Okay, do you agree with that, Nashla? Anthony, do you agree? Okay, so he had to make a decision, so think about that. If he decided to continue on the path that he was on, the story would have taken a completely different direction, right? And if he decides to lead the team, it takes another direction. So there is your climax of the story, all right? Was it an exciting part? Yes, no? Did it have some action in it?
Well,
Nashla, was it an exciting part when he had to make this decision? Okay, all right, so it fit both of our criteria, okay? So let's review really quick. What is the first part of our plot diagram? What was the word? The first part of our plot diagram, the bottom of our roller coaster is called the exposition. All right, so the exposition exposes or shows us what? Where it takes place and who the characters are. Nice job. Then we have what? What's going up? Rising action. All right, and those are all the events that lead to the what? Climax. And our climax we just discussed is the what?
Most exciting part.
Most exciting, or when the character has to make a decision. Okay, and then we have falling action, which is what? All the events that lead to the end of the story, which is called the what? Resolution. Nicely done, you guys got this. All right, we are going to watch a short film. It is called Presto. All right, I don't think there's any words. You're going to be ready to break down the parts of the plot with your group. I'm going to give you all a plot diagram right now. So as you're watching, if you know some of the parts, go ahead and start jotting it down on your plot diagram. And then as a group, you will be able to fill it out, okay? Go ahead and put your names on these. All right, so you want to make sure you're paying attention to grab one. Everybody needs to grab one. Okay, you want to be paying attention to the plot of the story. All right, who are the characters? If you don't know their names, just write down what you see. Okay. Again, you do not have to capture everything. I want you watching. You will discuss as a group after. Ready? Oops, and I just restarted the whole thing. All right, you got your characters. Get your characters. Get your characters. we're gonna do now is get to our next slide. All right, so with your group, you are going to complete the plot diagram. Okay, so use the plot diagram to label the parts of the plot for the short film Presto. Be ready to share act. Okay, so you're gonna start with your exposition. Who are the characters? Where is it taking place? All right, and then our rising action, climax. You might wanna talk about that climax first. What do you think what the climax was? That way you can think of all the events that were leading up to it, and then the events that follow after. I will tell you that the falling action and the resolution were really quick in this one, okay? They were really short clips after. All right, so the bulk of everything, and that happens a lot, the bulk of everything was in our rising action. All right, so you're gonna have about 12 minutes. I also want you to determine the deeper meaning or the theme of this short film, and you can write that right in the middle of your plot diagram, okay? Questions? No questions? All right, go ahead and begin discussing. Where is it taking place? What's the setting? What is that called? Yeah, that's fine. Right, and then I would say the easiest thing to do is you guys come up with a climax. Where was the point, the height of the action, and it was very visual. Where the character, the main character, who's our main character? The bunny or the guy? The bunny is our main character, right? So where our bunny had to make a decision, and it was very visual.
Cause that's his name.
Like he stopped, and you could see what
Like
you're
if they
thinking.
go to a show.
Okay, so that's where you had to make a decision. So write that, and then figure out going.
Our shows, but
Okay?
when you go to
Yep.
a show like that, that's what they say.
Is Presto the man's name?
I think that's the bunny's name.
What, bunny?
I don't know. I think the bunny's name is Presto.
No, we're still Presto guys.
The guy's Presto. You could just say the magician. He's a magician, so the magician and the rabbit. That's fine. Don't get hung up on names. What did we get for the climax?
Oh, it's a rabbit? Oh, look, a bunny.
I put rabbit.
Yeah, it was really visual, right? Like, yep, there you go. That is it. And then, so now think about what events led up to that and what events came after that. Okay? Nicely done. What'd you guys get? What do you think the climax is? What's the climax of the story? Is that the climax?
No,
That's the resolution. So what's the climax? It was a very, very visual, where you
when
could
that
see
bunny
it.
was hungry.
Okay, the bunny was hungry. What was the height, what do you think the height of the action was? When they started to fight, that was the climax, when they started to fight. You think that's the one? Okay, so they were fighting all through the whole thing, right? Okay, so they're fighting, the bunny does something, the man does something, the bunny does something, the man does something, and then all of a sudden, what happens to the man? Okay, so what happened? He falls, right? And what did the bunny do? Okay, so do you remember did the bunny have a choice?
Yes.
What were the bunny's choices?
Get the carrot or
Or,
help.
okay, so what is our climax? What's the definition of climax? Or, the character makes a choice. So what's our climax? When the rabbit what?
The carrot or
led to the climax, and then
I wanna give
the
it
two
back.
events after, okay? Nicely done. Yep, let's go. Okay, but we already came up with it, with the climax. We already came up with the climax. Write it down. Ask your partner. That's why we're talking. Ask your partner what it was, because I was over here and we came up with it as a group. Okay, what is our, Fatima, what's our climax? About what? What decision? What was the bunny's decision? Yep, so the bunny has to make the decision to save him or let him fall. That's your climax. Alright, and then you need the events that led up to it and the events that came after it. Alright, once you have your climax, I need you guys to discuss the 3 events that led to your climax, okay, and get them written down. Like, start at the very beginning, because if it goes up, right, if it goes up, you want the first event, second event, third event, like, what is the first event that started this whole thing? Yes, nicely done. You need to be working with your group, okay? Alright, what's our first event that happened? Yep, or he doesn't give him the carrot. What's our next event that happens? Yep, that's event number 2. So see how it climbs? You need to start first event, second event, third event. Alright, so it goes up in order. Alright, we have about 6 more minutes. Okay, so now we know what the climax was, right? So what are the 3 events that lead to the climax? What is our first event that happens? Think back to the beginning of the movie. Okay, because he's what? Yep, that's our first event. And then what happens after that? And then after that, right before this, okay? Yep, you have to go in order. So the first thing that happened in the clip, what's the first thing that happened in the clip? Yep, then what's the next thing? Yep, what happens after that? Yep. And then what's the third thing that leads to your climax? How we doing over here, guys? I hear a lot of talking, but I'm not too sure it's on task. What you got, Anthony? Okay, so what's your next event? What happens?
They have to go to the stage to do the first match.
Okay. So write that down. So here, right here, this says conflict. What's the conflict? Conflict is the problem, right? What's the major problem in this story? Right, but add on to that. So the bunny is hungry and the man won't feed him, all right? That's your problem, that's your conflict. What is our conflict in the story? What is the major problem? Okay, so that's your major problem in the story that leads to, what's the problem, the event that kicks everything off? It might be your first event. He was hungry and what's happening? He wouldn't feed him, so that's your conflict. Nicely done, guys. See that box in the middle that says conflict? Okay, so what is your major problem? Conflict is your major problem. So what is our major problem in the story that's driving everything? The bunny is what? What's the major problem that starts the whole thing off? The carrot. What about the carrot?
That he wants to eat the carrot, he starts to, because if he doesn't eat the carrot, he won't fuck himself. The magician,
Who wants the carrot?
the bunny.
The bunny wants the carrot because why?
Because he was hungry.
Okay, and what is the man's not doing what?
He's not feeding the carrot.
The man's not giving him the carrot, so that's your conflict. Even though that's your first thing, it still is also your conflict, so you need to put it there. Yep, absolutely.
Wait, it depends, right?
No, in your conflict right here, hon. Do you need me to sharpen that?
The bunny doesn't wanna do the tree.
There you go. Alright, we have about 2 more minutes.
The bunny doesn't wanna do the tree.
We need to get more events. What happens after?
He doesn't wanna do the tree.
Okay, what else? So, right here we have the bunny's trying to eat and they have to start the show, right? So after that, what happens? The bunny is trying to what?
Torture.
Because what?
He's hungry.
Okay, and then what happens after that?
He keeps torturing him until he just snaps out of it and throws the carrot.
Everything before the climax, so we're leading up to the climax of the story. And the climax of the story is the man is what?
The bunny has to decide.
If he wants to help the magician or let him fall to his death, right? Okay, so what happens before that? Okay, yeah, alright, so the bunny is doing what to the man? Okay, and the man is doing what to the bunny? Yes, but what else? Is the man fighting back? Okay, there's your events, okay? There's your events. Alright, we have about 20 seconds. It looks like you need one more event. And then we're gonna go over these. I need you guys to be ready to share out. Ooh, that's loud. Okay. Alright, so, did anybody come up with a deeper meaning? The theme? What do we think the theme of the story might be? No, what's tense? Is tense a theme? Tense is a what? Starts with an M. A mood. Alright, a theme is a what? A lesson. So what lesson did we learn from that? Eat before you do something? Okay, let's think a little bit deeper. Just a little deeper. I agree with you. I don't do well if I'm hungry, okay? But let's think about a life lesson that could be applied to anyone. What did we learn from watching that? Nope. Do we use character names in a theme? No. It's a lesson that anybody could take, right? So what did we learn? Okay, so even though he was mad at him, he still helped him. So can we put that into a statement that doesn't include he? That you could walk away with, because you're not a he. Right? Okay, so what, can we put that into a statement? Take out the he, or in the even though. or use even though you are, even though you're mad at someone, you should
Still help them.
you should still help them, all right? So even though you're mad at someone, you should still help them. All right, and then here I have, to keep trust in a relationship, treat others with respect and dignity, all right? Either one of those, perfectly fitting for this. All right, so our exposition, who are our characters?
The bunny and
Okay, in Presto, I think. And where's it taking place? Auditorium, stage, theater, whatever, okay? So if you don't have that, make sure you write it down, okay? Exposition, yep. Because remember that exposition exposes our characters.
exposed.
Yep, that's where exposition comes from. Characters and our, the other thing, what's the other thing? Characters in our setting, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about what is our conflict? What is the major problem in the story? The bunny is,
Have to decide.
no, that's the climax. The other C, conflict. And,
Espresso won't feed him.
okay, the bunny is hungry. The rabbit wants the carrot and does the trick, but the magician won't give it to him. Okay, so what is our first event in our rising action? The first thing that happens.
The bunny was hungry.
Okay, what else? Okay, so we have event number one. Oh, the rabbit won't do the trick. Okay, but I could say he's trying. Well, the first one is the rabbit won't do the trick.
They start fighting.
Okay, is that the second one?
Yeah.
Okay. Second one, the rabbit starts messing with the magician through the magic hat. All right, second thing that happens. So what is our next thing that happens after that? Before the climax, the magician retaliates but keeps getting hurt more. Okay? If you don't have that, go ahead and change your events. The magician retaliates, but keeps getting hurt more. All right, really quick, what's our climax? We all have it, right? What's the climax?
The bunny has to make the decision to save him or let him fall.
Yes, and in this, I kept saying it's very visual, right? If you remember, you can see the rabbit. The rabbit kind of like turns and it looks like he's thinking, right? So the magician is hanging at the top of the stage and starts to fall. And the rabbit, I want you guys to say, because it is the decision. And the rabbit has to make a decision. Okay, so what do we have for our falling action? What do you have for the event that leads to the end? What happens?
He helps him and he actually does the trick.
Yeah, so he helps him and he does the trick, okay? So the rabbit looks back and feels sympathy. The rabbit saves the magician with a hat. I'm gonna say these are, yeah, that's what happens. So the magician is hanging at the top of the stage and starts to fall, and the rabbit needs to make a decision. Okay, then the rabbit saves the magician with the hat. That was his decision, right? So that's your falling action. And then the magician gives the rabbit the carrot, is how it ends, right? Now, Fatima said, all this for a carrot? Could the magician have just given him the carrot in the beginning?
Yeah.
He could have, right? Would we have had a story? No. We wouldn't have had a story because it would have just been done and over. So do you see how everything, all these little pieces built? And it was very descriptive, okay? So this could have been over. He could have just given it to the rabbit, but instead, the storyteller built the story and put all of this action in it to keep you interested. All right, go ahead and make sure this is what yours looks like. Give me a thumbs up when you are done. Set, I'm gonna give you 30 more seconds. And 10 more seconds. All right, here we go. When we come back, when you guys come back, which is third block, we are gonna go over telling the story from a narrator's point of view, and then I think we're gonna start, show, don't tell, okay? At this time, you are going to put your plot diagrams in your folder, okay? They are a resource for you. You will be doing plot diagrams for our own stories. So keep these as a resource.